Hi, welcome to our Motivational Monday, and our guest today is Karen. Oh my gosh, Karen Leland. I'm so sorry, it's Monday. I can't even remember my own name. Karen is the founder of Sterling Marketing Group, a branding and marketing strategy firm where she works with clients building stronger personal, team, and business brands. She's the author of of 9 best-selling books. I happen to have one right here, the brand mapping strategy, which we're going to talk a little bit about today. And she sold more than 400,000 copies of her 9 books. She's also regularly featured as a writer for Inc.com, Forbes.com, Entrepreneur.com, and other magazines. Karen has been interviewed by the Today Show, CNN, Fox News, and Oprah, and she's spoken at Harvard, Yale, and TEDx, among others. Her clients have included Twitter, LinkedIn, Apple, American Express, and Google. So I feel so fortunate. You've been on Oprah and you're talking to me. Thank you. Karen, welcome.
Thank you. I'm so happy to be here.
Great. So the reason I brought Karen on today is at CEO Space, where we're both members, she had a table last time. And we had the most amazing branding conversation where she was evaluating everyone's branding. And the topic was color. And so we're going to talk about that today and why you really need to take a deep dive into what your colors look like. So take it away.
Well, it's so interesting because, and I know you run across this all the time too, is someone will come to me and they'll show me their website and they'll go, I spent all this money and I got it done, but it just doesn't quite feel right. And I go, well, what doesn't feel right about it to you? And then they'll say, well, the web designer said to me something like this: chartreuse is a really hot color this year, so we ought to use chartreuse on your website. And I say, okay, but the problem is that chartreuse may not communicate what you're looking to communicate. So the problem is that people think about colors from the point of view of what they like, right? The colors that they feel a resonance with, which isn't an invalid way to think about it, but it leaves out this whole aspect of color, which is the psychology of color. And when it comes to your visual brand, what we call your brand identity, your website, your collateral, the cover of your book, your logo, all of that, the colors that you choose definitely give a certain message about your business and about your brand. So you have to make sure that the colors you're picking are in alignment with what that brand is. And often people just don't stop to think about that. They just think about, well, do I like pink? Do I like blue? Do I like chartreuse? Do I like green? Do I like purple? And they don't think about the psychological impact of the colors. Sometimes when I'm working with a client and I'm art directing a website, it can take me 6 or 8 hours to go through just tons and tons of Pantone color, swatches on the web to find a palette of colors that I think fits that person's brand. So it can take 6 to 8 hours. So it's a serious business picking colors.
That is so amazing. My very first website and my whole, that's another thing we'll talk about too, is how you rebrand over time. My very first was black and like Pink Panther pink. And someone a branding expert actually told me like 2 years into it, like that pink is very mature.
That's a problem, that pink.
Yeah. And I was like, but I love it.
And there are companies, that have gotten into trouble. Their names escape me at the moment, but where they did a product for women and they made it all pink. And then people were offended because they said, just because it's women, why should the color just be pink? Mm-hmm. So we tend to have some biases about colors too, rather than evaluating them for their really very real psychological impacts and then picking the colors that work for that.
Very cool. So can you tell us a little bit about, just in general terms, because I know you don't have your color wheel here to go through all these. But just, we talked a lot about like what black means, what blue means. Can you go through some of that for us so people get a general idea?
Yeah, well, one of the things is that there's a very big color psychology, obviously. And one of the things about color psychology is if you look at things, for example, like orange. Orange is a very bright, cheerful color, but orange tends to communicate also alert, right? Or pay attention. Whereas you get something like purple, and the purple hues can tend to communicate more, for example, luxury. Purple is one of those colors that communicates luxury. So if you were doing a very high-end spa, you might use purple, but you wouldn't necessarily use orange, because orange, even though it can be a color of action, is also a color of urgency. Or think about red. Red is a color of danger. Red's for sure a color of action. So if you were going to do a website for a spa, if you had a lot of red, you might love red, but think about all the messaging that that's giving. Whereas if you look at something like green, green is for growth. Blue is the most stable color. Blue is for stability. That's why you think of IBM blue, right? Mm-hmm. These are just some general characteristics of colors. And so you could use a little orange, but you wouldn't want it to be the dominant color. And then there's hues of colors and what those reflect. But basically, people have to start by thinking about, and this is true with any kind of visual branding, often people start with the visual branding. And what I say is don't start with the visual branding, start with the narration of the brand. Who is your brand? What are your qualities? What makes you distinct as a brand? What's the tone of your brand? What's the energy of your brand? What's the feel of your brand? Because when you know that, it's a lot easier to then pick visuals, fonts, colors, designs, lines, pictures that match and are congruent with that. And it's amazing to me how many people start with the visuals, which to me sort of seems backwards.
Right. So what advice can you give people? I see this a lot out there. People who are their own brand, solopreneurs who hide behind a company brand instead of being out there themselves.
Well, sometimes I always tell people that you can be, if you're a solopreneur, either you're the brand, excuse me, Karen Tiber Leland, or your company's the brand. In my case, Sterling Marketing Group is the company. There's nothing wrong with being a solopreneur and having your brand be the company brand. Part of it has to do with what your goals and objectives are. If your goal is to sell the company, to build the company up to a certain place or the practice up to a certain place and then sell either the practice or the proprietary information you've created with the practice, there's nothing wrong with being a solopreneur and having the brand be the name of your business. That's fine. Mm-hmm. There are some people that just aren't comfortable being out front. I've had clients like that where they were a solopreneur, but they weren't comfortable being the face of the company, so they liked it being Company X. So I don't think there's necessarily a right way to do that. I think part of it has to do with, are you more comfortable being the face of the business, or do you want the business to be the face of the business? Are you looking for people more to relate to you as a company than as an individual so that you can grow and expand the company business and then sell that or have other people do the work? Or are you really looking to build your personal brand as a thought leader and an expert in that field? Because those are the kinds of answers that drive whether you do it. And by the way, you can go back and forth. For many years, I was Sterling Marketing Group. Then I decided I wanted to be Karen Tiber Leland as the brand. And now I'm going back to it being Sterling Marketing Group after a number of years, just for my own personal reasons for different things. So there isn't a right way to do that. But I do think it's really important to do that consciously, to make that decision very consciously and intentionally, rather than just, it's doing your brand by design, what I call by design rather than by default. And a lot of people do their brand by default.
Oh, a lot of people do. I would very much agree with that. There's just that thought that is the elements of the brand and not the feeling of the brand. So when they sit down to do all this, they really don't think about the feelings they want to evoke with it. And exactly. I think most newbies kind of go in that direction and then get it as they go along. That's interesting that you went back and forth. I've done the same. I kind of hid behind the corporate for a while and then last year rebranded as myself, and it's taken off in a whole different great direction when I did that, because I just had, but it was kind of fear. It was kind of fear of I don't want to be the face of it, and then having my friends come out and go, but you are the face of it.
Yeah.
People hire you.
But sometimes for some people, it's not fear. It's because they want to grow the business in a certain way. And it's more advantageous to have people relate to the business as a company rather than as an individual. I just think it depends on your circumstances.
So tell us a little bit more about your book, because I found this a very interesting read. It's super easy to follow. I will tell you that. Very, very easy.
And intentionally so. What happens is that that was my 9th book. And the way I tend to write books is either a publisher comes to me and goes, wow, I heard you speak, or I read your articles and we'd like you to write a book for us. Or I've been doing work in an area for so long that there's so much in my head that I start feeling like if I don't get it out of my head and onto paper, I'm going to go crazy. I just get to this point where there's too much in there. And that's what happened with that book. Was I had all this in my head after doing this work for 10 years, and people would call me, and there were people that I would talk to on the phone who wanted me to work with them, but for one reason or another I wasn't a good choice, either cost wise I wasn't right for them, or time wise, etc. And I thought, I need to get all that information in a book that, as you just said, thank you very much, is easy to read, easy to follow, very modular, very to-do oriented, very clear, so that I had something to give people. At least they could understand some of the core concepts of my brand mapping process strategy and what I think people have to think about in this whole personal, business, and team branding issues. So that's how that book came about. And I was really fortunate in that the book before that had been with Entrepreneur Press, the people that run Entrepreneur Magazine. They had come to me to write a book on Pinterest for business, which I did do. Mm-hmm. And I thought I really liked working with them. It was a great experience. So I went back to them and I pitched the brand mapping strategy, design, build, and accelerate your brand. And they said, yeah, they'd be interested in publishing it. So I was very lucky in that. Because I said, do I have to write a 40-page proposal? And she goes, no, we've already worked with you. You could write like a 3-page book proposal. I was like, woohoo, done, sold. I don't even care how much money you give me. I don't have to write a book proposal.
40 pages is a lot.
Yeah. Well, my average book proposal is 30 or 40 pages. Yeah.
Oh, wow. So you pretty much just write it, and then all you have to do is fill it in when they say yes.
Yeah, well, I have a very high success rate of book proposals being accepted, and I have a really high success rate of writing book proposals for other authors, ghostwriting them, and having theirs be accepted. Because it's funny, I've never self-published a book, ever. All mine have been traditionally published by publishing houses. It's just how it turned out for me. I'm not against self-publishing. It just hasn't been something I've done. I've helped clients self-publish, but I've personally never self-published. So I've written a lot of book proposals for a lot of people. So, but I was really thrilled because they were like, no, just give us a couple of pages. I was like, yay, and a marketing plan. And I was so happy. But I'm really happy with this book, with the brand mapping strategy book, because it took all that information I had in my head and it put it out in a way that I think was really accessible to people. And it's just a good guideline for people.
It very much so. It is. So, can you give us a few of the highlights in it that you felt most like I had to share this?
Well, one is this whole brand mapping strategy process that I came up with. I always say to people, there's a million different models for branding. And one is not the right model and one is not the better model. It's whatever model resonates with you. And the brand mapping strategy process just happens to be a model I created that happens to resonate with my clients. It's not the only model. It's not even necessarily the best model, but it's a really good, solid, strong model. And basically what I did in the book was I outlined, here's what I do with people. Here's what I think you have to think about as your brand. And the problem is a lot of people think of branding as either the visuals, right? What we call the brand identity, the logo, the website, the colors, the fonts, or they think of branding as an elevator pitch, their 1 or 2 sentence thing that they say about their brand, both of which, by the way, are an important part of your brand, but they're the tip of the iceberg. So what I tried to do in this book, in the brand mapping strategy process, is give people all the under parts of the iceberg and then the ocean around it, that I think is important for people to know about their brand in order to really effectively design a strategy to then start to put that in motion and in play. Because the other thing people do, quite frankly, is they decide to do tactical things to get their brand out there before they've really thought through all the thorough things about their brand. So people will go, I'm going to do Facebook advertising. And I'm like, but that doesn't make sense for your clients. Given who your market is, that doesn't make any sense. Or people are, I'm going to blog. And I'm like, yeah, but you're not a writer and your people don't really read. They're more Instagram people. So I think people don't often think through these tactical approaches in a way that are really required. I mean, when I do a tactical strategic marketing and branding plan for a client, that's often months of work and a 20 or 30 page report. It's not an easy thing. It's not like a simple thing to think through all of your tactical options to come up with what is your best branding and marketing tactical strategy. So a lot of that information is in the book. You still have to do it. That's the unfortunate part.
Well, you do, but I think that's one of the big things I see out there is that you're right about the visuals and they do the technical stuff first, but they don't really dig, especially the solopreneurs, digged into who am I? What are my values here? What are the things that I want to communicate to people? And, what are my non-negotiables that I'm willing to go and do? So there is a lot of deep dive that you have to
A
do
lot.
to be really solid. So you're not changing your message all the time. You're not,
And so you're clear in your message.
yes.
And part of what solopreneurs have trouble with is they want everybody to be their client. And I'm always saying to solopreneurs, the best thing you can do is not have everyone be your client. Nothing makes me happier than when I talk to somebody on the phone and they go, I don't really think you're the right person for me. I'm like, oh, yay.
Yeah.
My prayer and everything is, dear God, please make it clear.
No, that's actually great. And I struggled with that for a long time. I actually got to a point about 4 years ago where I had a caricature drawn of my ideal client. And so now when I get off the phone and I didn't close something, or I'm even on the phone and I can look up at it and kind of tick off like, ooh, that doesn't fit. Because those people are not the people you want to work with either, because it's going to be a difficult relationship. And
part of it is it's much easier when you get clients that are the right client for you, and being willing to narrow and just have those right clients. We were talking about CEO Space where we met, and someone was asking me about if I get business from CEO Space, and I said I get very little, because in an entire group of 100 people, maybe 2 of the people in that room are the right client for me. Maybe 2. Given what I do and the way I do it and the way I execute and my whole way I have my business set up, there's maybe 2 people that are right. But the beauty of it is when those 2 people meet me, they know that I'm the right person, and there's no competition. They're just like, no, you're the right one. So it's almost easier because I don't have to close anything, because they recognize me right away. They come to me, and do you know what I'm saying? So I don't waste any time trying to get people to close or to talk to people, because I realize there's 2 people in this group of 100 that are my right client. And usually if they just meet me, they will know, and they'll come to me and go, okay, you're the one.
Yeah. So there's no convincing. Once you get on that track, you have to convince somebody that they need to, you've lost it.
No. And in fact, these days, I really don't even give people, for the most part, referrals anymore. Just because there's so much stuff online, and what's a referral going to tell someone? Mm-hmm. You're not going to give somebody a bad referral.
Right.
You're not. So for me, it's really not about convincing people. It's about knowing exactly what I'm offering and how I'm offering it and who the right client is. And then the right client and I usually find each other.
Right.
So there's plenty of business for everyone. Yeah. If you especially if you know what your lane is and you're really clear about it, you'll find your right clients. If you're good. I mean, you have to be able to deliver and be good at what you do. That is the other side of it. You can only get away for so long with doing a mediocre job before you get a bad reputation. Then people are like, don't use that person. They don't really deliver.
Right. No, I completely agree with that. And I've seen that several times out in the marketing space, especially.
Oh yeah.
A lot of promises made that just aren't kept. They're not.
Yeah. So. It's the reason I don't do any projects on retainer with clients. I only do projects based on deliverables. I never do a project based on retainer. It's all based on deliverables, because I want at the end for the client to go, she said she would do A, B, C, D, E, F, and G, and she did A, B, C, D, E, F, and G. It just keeps everything a lot cleaner.
Yes, I definitely agree with that. And kind of mine are based on that too. Even my courses are based on that now, with this is what you will walk away with. Whether
marketing, it's a real problem today.
Yeah, it definitely is. So tell us, where can we find this book? And you guys can see it right there.
That book is on, excuse me. Well, of course it's on Amazon. So people can go to Amazon and get the brand mapping strategy, design, build, and accelerate your brand. They can buy it off my website at KarenLeland.com. They can also go to Barnes & Noble and buy it in the physical bookstore. They can go to barnesandnoble.com and buy it. Those are some of the places it's available.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for coming on today. I feel like Oprah Jr. today. No?
Oh, Julia, I'm so happy. It was so nice when we met, and I was so honored and delighted that you asked me to be on your show. It was really
Well, thank you. You just had so much great information to that you imparted on our table. It was a lesson just sitting there for everyone, and that's what I love about CEO Spaces. You get at tables once in a while where it's like, wow,
yeah, we had that was a great table, actually. Yeah.
Yeah.
People at our table.
Yeah, it really was. All right. Well, thank you so much. And you guys, I will put the link to Karen's book down below this interview, so you can go over and pick it up on Amazon.